Hey there, nerdy friends! I am here to tell you about the things that I read in June! So the first book I read this month was Ghost Ship by Diane Carey. It is a Star Trek Next Generation novel. I think it did a good job of describing the scenes. Like, I'd be thinking about it and be like, oh, what episode was that? Oh wait, I was just picturing that in my head. That was in the book. So that part was good, but I feel like I pulled this off of fanfiction.com.
He tried not to watch the captain while the captain was watching the bridge, but it was hypnotic. Dr. Crusher was yet another stroke of color against the bisque walls and carpet. Over her cobalt and black uniform, her hair was a Cleopatra crown of pure terracotta, and there was just something about a redhead. But Data was a work of art. Geordie alone could see the exotic materials, brilliantly blended, the different levels of heat and coolness, the different densities where metal met synthetic, where synthetic met organism, and where all meshed. Geordie allowed himself an indulgent gaze at Data's face as the android glowed with concentration. Geordie saw a handsome face, unafraid of its own features, a face that could show many feelings, from courage to calculation, confusion to compassion, and Data's eyes, no matter their brimstone cast, were unfailingly gentle.
So aside from that, it was a good book. There was an interesting debate about euthanasia. There was stuff to think about. And Data attempts to use human slang. That was amusing. So overall, I felt like it was pretty characteristic of the show, but... Next I read Insurgent, the second book in the Divergent series. It's been a couple years since I read Divergent, and then I heard the biggest spoiler of the entire series, and I was like, okay, what's the point? And then I started thinking, and I was like, okay, it's not the final destination, it's the journey that's fun about a book. So I finally got around to reading this. Realized I forgot a lot of stuff about Divergent. There were a lot of people that they were referencing that I was like, am I supposed to know this person, or is this a new character? I'm not entirely sure. It was a good book though, I did enjoy it, it was worth the read. Next I read all of these Miss Marvel comics. I'm not going to review each one because that would take a while. The story is about a Muslim American high school girl who finds herself with these superhuman abilities, and she's trying to balance her family life, her religious life, her high school life, and her superhero life. I find them cool, they're interesting, they're engaging, they're funny. I was missing a couple editions somewhere in the middle, so I was a little bit confused, but overall I did enjoy them. Next I read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. For someone who enjoys reading and science fiction, I'm not sure how it took me so long to pick up this book. I've heard about it for a long time, and finally I saw it in the bookstore and I was like, okay, I gotta see what this is about. This book is so quirky and whimsical and weird. One of Pixar's rules of storytelling is that coincidences are great to get characters into trouble, but coincidences to get characters out of trouble is cheating. This book completely broke that rule, but it was completely justified. Okay, for a huge chunk of the book, they have an infinite improbability drive, so anything other than coincidence would be coincidence. I really enjoyed this book. It's so kooky and weird. If you're the kind of person who likes science fiction for its logic and scientific reasoning, just skip it. Just don't read this book. But if your mind is really random like mine, you will really enjoy this book. Next, I read the complete poems of Dorothy Parker. This girl is so hardcore. There are a lot of depressing topics in here, like societal expectations, heartbreak, thoughts of death in general, but she does it in such a good way. She uses comedy in a way that you can read it and laugh on the outside, but on the inside your brain is like, oh my gosh, what is this world? What is my life? I took pictures of and wrote down so many poems from this book that I was like, yes, that was so good. Most of these poems were published probably about a century ago, but it's astounding how relevant this book remains. If you enjoy poetry, I totally recommend this book. If you don't enjoy poetry, probably not. Next I read The 100 by Kass Morgan. Basically, it's a futuristic Lord of the Flies. I really enjoyed this book, but I feel like there was so much missed opportunity. There was a lot of time focused on romance. There was a love triangle because YA, apparently it's required to have a love triangle now. And yes, I think it took the step further from Lord of the Flies, by focusing on the interpersonal relationships, but there was a lot less survival stuff. That can be such an exciting book. Learning to hunt, learning to fend for yourselves. There's a lot of political opportunity, like kids trying to figure out who's in charge, who gets weapons, who is responsible for what, how do we make sure that this is a functioning society. And I think it touched on all of that, but there was a lot of focus on like love triangle. Oh, I love you. Oh, now I don't love you. Now I love you. Well, I think that stuff was valuable. I feel like it could have been more evenly spread out between relationships and survival. But it was a good book. I would still recommend it. And finally, I read The Rest of Us Just Live Here by Patrick Ness. Basically, these kids are living in the stereotypical book town where vampires and werewolves and demons and gods and goddesses come and take over. Some kids are the chosen one. They fall in love with vampires and do all of this weird stereotypical stuff, but then like they're just normal kids who aren't the chosen one. So I enjoyed it. It just didn't parody stuff that I'm terribly into. So it was a good book. I would definitely recommend it, but it wasn't like, oh my gosh, I can't put this down, this is my new favorite book. It was a good book. And I mean, you only find your favorite book once, or like maybe a few times if it changes, but you find lots of good books. This was a good book. So these, plus the comics that are currently on the ground, are the books that I read in June. It was a good month. I enjoyed all of these books. There were no horrible books. If you want to find out more about what I'm reading, I have a Goodreads account and a blog linked down below. Oh no. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.